Good morning, Boston. Okay, my friends, we are now on the brink. So, as I speak to you now, negotiators between the Biden White House and House Republicans have been working all night throughout the night in a desperate last-ditch effort to try to avoid a looming default. This would be the first time in the history of the United States that we will be defaulting on our sovereign debt, but this is now where things stand. Joe Biden, unbelievably, with a looming debt deadline, went to Hiroshima, Japan, went on a foreign trip there, photo ops, met with Zelensky, met with other world leaders, hobnobbed, and now is on his way back, cutting his trip short, and yet still we have no deal to lift the debt ceiling, to raise the federal borrowing limit. You need a deal between Congress and the president. However, Biden now believes, being pushed by Bernie Sanders, who held a press conference recently saying, simply invoke the 14th Amendment. In other words, do it unilaterally. Unilaterally claim through an obscure clause in the 14th Amendment that the President of the United States can go completely around Congress, circumvent Congress, and issue new debt by himself. Now, let me tell you, if Biden is to do this, because he doesn't want to craft a deal with Republicans, and I'll explain why very soon, but if he doesn't want to make a deal with Republicans, and he goes with the nuclear option, which would be invoking the 14th Amendment, I am telling you right now, we will have a full-blown legal constitutional crisis because the president is not a king. The president is not an emperor. The president cannot issue new debt by himself. Only Congress can lift the borrowing limit and issue new debt to pay off previous bills. This, even Janet Yellen says Biden doesn't have the authority. Congress says he doesn't have the authority. Everybody says he doesn't have the authority. For Biden to now invoke or threaten to invoke the 14th Amendment, I'm telling you, is a blatant violation of the Constitution, a violation of separation of powers. It is illegal. Absolutely illegal. And the United States would default. I'm telling you, this will not be held up in the courts. The country will not accept it. Congress will not accept it. The banks will not accept it. Our creditors will not accept it. Nobody will accept it. This is socialist fantasy. This is the stuff of La La Land. And so he has refused to engage with McCarthy because he doesn't want to acquiesce to certain Republican proposals. And one of them being McCarthy wants, listen to this, to return spending to what it was 5 months ago. Let me repeat that. He wants to return spending not 5 years ago, not 10 years ago, not 50 years ago, 5 months ago. That's it. And lock that in for 10 years. Saying, okay, fine, we have massive revenues coming in. We've never had more tax revenues pouring in than we do now. So let's start climbing our way out of a 31, almost $32 trillion debt. These are record debt, record deficits, by simply putting a little bit of discipline on spending. Over 10 years, everything can only grow. Defense, discretionary spending, all the big programs by 1% a year. That's it. They're still growing. They're just growing at 1% a year. That's all. And if we just do that, we will save $5 trillion, which is at least a start. For Biden, it's too much. When you're a rabid socialist, or to be more accurate, when you're the puppet, the mouthpiece for rabid socialists who want to spend another 10, 15, 20 trillion dollars, including, by the way, now nationally they want reparations for slavery. That's now a new proposal being pushed by many on the progressive socialist left. So, when you want to give away free food, housing, health care, education, you name it, shelter, to illegal aliens by the millions and millions, and you want a Green New Deal, and you want reparations, the 1% spending increase a year, that doesn't cut it. They need to maximize spending by tens of trillions of dollars. And so now the hard left is forcing Biden into a game of chicken with House Republicans. And what is to me incredible about all of this, how reckless and irresponsible this is. We have maybe 9 days left. According to Janet Yellen, Secretary of the Treasury, she says the debt deadline is essentially June 1st. After June 1st, we will no longer be able to pay our bills. So she says lift the debt ceiling by June 1st. Biden has not met with McCarthy until today. Finally, today, at the last minute, at the last hour, they are going to have a final last-ditch effort to try to resolve their differences. Now, if they can't, then we will default. We will default. Now, there is another option, and I'm going to get to that. But Biden doesn't want to use that option because that takes away all of his leverage and all of his bargaining power. But what Biden now is doing is he is holding the American economy hostage. He is literally flirting with default because, as has been done by previous presidents, whether it was President Trump, whether it was Obama, whether it was George W. Bush, whether it was Bill Clinton, I can run down the list, Democrats and Republicans, when the other party controls the purse strings, the House of Representatives, to lift the debt ceiling, you have to make a deal. You have to make a deal. He has refused to make a deal. Obama made a deal with then John Boehner, House Speaker. Trump made a deal with then House Speaker Pelosi. Bush made a deal with the congressional Democrats. Clinton made deals with Newt Gingrich. But this guy doesn't want to make a deal. So the Republicans have passed a bill that would lift the debt limit by over $1 trillion. So we're good until next year. In exchange for, as I pointed out, these spending reductions, it's not even a reduction. It's just a reduction in the growth of spending. And lock that in over 10 years. There you can save several $1 trillion. Now, if Biden doesn't like what McCarthy has proposed, come up with your own proposal. Make a counter proposal. And then you negotiate and hammer out a bipartisan deal. But now, they don't want a deal because Biden for months has said he will not deal with House Republicans because in his mind, these are extremists. Oh my God, fascists. Oh my white supremacists. So as he's maligned them and criticized them and demonized them and slandered them, saying, I want a clean debt ceiling lifting. That's it. A clean debt hike. That's it. We're not going to negotiate on anything else. Just lift the credit card. Keep spending like drunken sailors. Just keep spending and spending and spending. Well, that's not the real world. And all of his predecessors, Republican and Democrats, have been able to cut a deal. He's the exception. He's trying to bully Republicans, intimidate Republicans, and I believe in the end, he wants a default. This would send economic shockwaves across the country and the world. Every economist says a default would tip the United States into a major recession. And Biden can then turn around, wreck the economy, and try to blame it on Republicans. He's that much of a scoundrel. He's that destructive. He's that incompetent. He's that irresponsible. And so, my question to you, double-barreled question. Number one, will they, should they come up with a deal? Today is the day. And should Biden, can Biden invoke the 14th Amendment? 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, my friends, a debt deadline is now looming. It is almost here. Both sides are far apart. And now Biden is toying with invoking the 14th Amendment to unilaterally circumvent Congress and lift the debt ceiling on his own, which I'm telling you, he has no authority, no legal basis or power to do so. It is blatantly illegal. It is blatantly unconstitutional. And it will trigger a massive constitutional legal crisis, and with it, most likely, an economic crisis. Listen now to House Speaker Kevin McCarthy saying over the weekend, instead of getting closer to a deal, we're going backwards. And the reason is simple. Bernie Sanders, AOC, the radical left, the socialist wing of the Democratic Party is now calling all the shots. Roll cut 20. Mike.
Republicans coming together?
Well, the White House didn't come here. And unfortunately, the White House moved backwards. And I think the Bernie Sanders and the socialist wing of their party has had real effect on the president, especially with him being out of the country. I don't think we're going to be able to move forward until the president can get back in the country. You know, on February 1st, I went to the president. We wanted something that could be responsible, sensible. For 97 days, he ignored us. And now, just from the last day till now, they've moved backwards. They actually want to spend more money than we spend this year. You can't do that. We all know how big this deficit is. We also know with inflation, spending that $6 trillion we have to spend less than we spent this year.
It's incredible. Really, I have to tell you, it is absolutely mind-bogglingly incredible. They've had nearly 100 days to negotiate this, and Biden refused to negotiate. And now we're at the brink. And so later today, McCarthy is going to finally sit down with Biden, and hopefully at the last possible minute, they can come up with some kind of a compromise. But look, I want you to just stand back. We now owe more than 130% of what we make. Our debt to GDP ratio is 130%. So imagine this. Your child has a credit card. You owe more than what the entire home takes in revenue. And your answer is to spend more? Your answer is, yeah, just keep on partying, baby. Keep buying those cars. Keep buying the boats. Keep spending, keep having parties. Don't stop. Just keep. All we're going to do is lift the ceiling, the limit on the credit card. Who does that? What you do instead is, right, you have a problem. We are spending way beyond our means. No, Junior. We're going to sell off the cars. We're going to sell off the yacht. we're going to start tightening our belts. No. There's going to be no more parties, Junior. That stuff is over. We're going to go item by item by item. What do we need? Okay. What don't we need? We cut. Instead, with these people, with Bernie, with Biden, with the radical left, it's spend, 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 spend. And so McCarthy is saying, if we're not careful, we're going to be at 50, 60 trillion in debt. Never mind $32 trillion in debt. So we already have a debt crisis in our country. Now it's getting to the point we're paying so much interest on the debt. It's now almost what we pay for the military, or what we pay for Social Security, or what we pay for Medicare or Medicaid. So his point, and he's completely correct, if we don't start to rein in some of this spending, we're done. This thing is going to break our back. Now, he's completely correct. Yet instead of dealing with this fiscal reality, the Democrats now are bent on a socialist takeover of the United States. They don't want any restraints, anything. Not forget increasing spending by 1% a year. They want what they've been doing now for the last couple of years. Trillions and trillions of new deficits year after year after year, spent on boondoggle after boondoggle after boondoggle. Listen now to Kevin McCarthy saying Bernie recently held a press conference, and the Squad and AOC and Ayanna Pressley and Elizabeth Warren and all the usual suspects came out and said, hey, to hell with Congress, to hell with the Constitution, to hell with checks and balances or separation of powers. Hey, we have a dictator in the White House. He can do whatever he wants. He can raise the debt limit himself. Listen now to McCarthy saying ever since Bernie had his 14th Amendment press conference, everything has changed in the negotiating position of Biden and his team. Roll cut 21, Mike.
In the last 50 years, we would average about 17% of GDP in revenue. Right now, we're almost at 20%. Only 2 times in American modern history have we ever got here, 1944 and 2000. So we have more money coming in to the coffers than at any time in history. The real challenge is our spending. Our spending on average for the last 50 years has been about 21%. Well, in FY22, after the Democrats had taken over, we're roughly over 24% of GDP. So it's a sheer spending problem. And it's very odd to me with what the president says. We have never offered something different than we talked about the entire time. The pivot has really been after Bernie Sanders had his press conference. The president pivoted back. He actually proposed spending billions more next year than we spend this year. The president's budget actually proposes spending more money than we spent at the height of the pandemic. We just can't afford to keep borrowing from China and be more dependent and create more inflation.
Bingo. Bingo. This is going to continue to make us dependent on China. And to me, the big fear, that buffoon in the White House is irresponsible and reckless enough to actually trigger a default. 6:31 on the great WRKO. We have less than 10 days now. Apparently today is going to be a huge meeting between House Speaker McCarthy and Dementia Joe over whether to resolve the differences between both sides. Unless they don't, and it looks increasingly like they are too far apart, they cannot bridge their differences, we may actually default on our debt for the first time in American history. Listen now to Joe Biden. This is absolutely incredible. He's now threatening to invoke the 14th Amendment to circumvent Congress and say, forget it. I don't need McCarthy. I don't need Congress. I don't need the House of Representatives. I will lift the debt limit on my own and issue new debt. Roll cut 11B, Mike.
We have not come up with unilateral action that could succeed in a matter of 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That's the issue. So it's up to lawmakers. So it's up to lawmakers. But my hope and intention is when we resolve this problem, I find a rationale to take it to the courts to see whether or not the 14th Amendment is, in fact, something that would be able to stop it. Thank you.
Incredible. I mean, this guy's playing Russian roulette now. He really is. Look, I mean, this is ultra mainstream economists, ultra mainstream business media outlets, all of them saying, if the United States doesn't pay its bills, if we default, if this idiot decides to try to invoke the 14th Amendment, Janet Yellen says he doesn't have the authority to do it. His own Treasury Secretary, no constitutional scholar worth his or her salt says, what are you talking about? Are you nuts? The president can't issue new debt. Since when?
Is the 14th Amendment fall into the category of extraordinary measures?
Well, extraordinary measures is used in a different way, but there has been much discussion of the 14th Amendment. And as President Biden said, I believe this morning, it doesn't seem like something that could be appropriately used in these circumstances, given the legal uncertainty around it and given the tight time frame we're on. So my devout hope is that Congress will raise the debt ceiling.
Now, this is my point. Okay, so this is fantasy land. Now, the problem is when you have Bernie Sanders running the economy and running these debt negotiations and AOC and Ilhan Omar and Ayanna Pressley, they could wreck the whole thing. We're really playing with fire now, because here's what's going to happen. If he decides to cut the negotiations and say, I'm not going to deal with these MAGA extremists, MAGA, ultra MAGA. So, okay, you want to be an arsonist? You want to take a blowtorch? Take a blowtorch to the Constitution. And then he says, I'm going to invoke the 14th Amendment. The Supreme Court's going to shoot it down. And every other court's going to shoot it down. But by the time it gets there, the markets are going to tank. The stock market is going to tank. Everybody's saying, as sure as the sun's going to come up, the stock market is going to crater. It's going to trigger a recession. They're talking unemployment rate here. Moody's, I mean, that's the big firm. Moody's said our credit rating is going to be downgraded. We're looking at unemployment at 8% like this. 7 million Americans thrown out of work. Like this. And this guy is willing to do that? Because he can't sit down and make a deal with McCarthy? And what I find incredible, they go, well, McCarthy won't lift the debt limit. He has. You may not like what he proposed. You may not like the bill. Okay, that's a different story. But he's raised the debt limit. The House bill raises the debt limit. I'm just stating the facts. And it has spending restraints. In other words, they're not spending less. They're just not spending as much. 1% a year over 10 years. That doesn't seem so unreasonable to me. And the president can't even give him a counteroffer. Fine, you don't like it? Give a counteroffer. Instead, it's a game of chicken. He wants McCarthy to blink. He wants McCarthy to say, okay, no mas. We're going to have no spending cuts, no reductions, nothing. A clean debt ceiling increase. That's it. We're just going to lift the national credit card. That's it. Lift the limit on the borrowing limit. Just lift it. We're just going to lift it. And we're not going to implement anything to slow down at least the growth or the rate of spending. Nothing. Just keep spending like there's no tomorrow. Now, that's not leadership. As I just said, that's being an arsonist. And he's playing now with your job, my job, your economic future, my economic future, the country's economic future. This is the height of recklessness, the height of irresponsibility. And the worst thing of all is here we are again, brinksmanship. Here we are again at the 11th hour. Here we are again, another manufactured crisis. Here we go. McCarthy reached out to him February 1st and said, let's do this now. Let's not do it with this deadline looming and all kinds of pressure, and we don't need the melodrama. We don't need the constant stress and anxiety. Let's just deal with this now. No, I don't deal with MAGA. Ultra MAGA. Okay. Well, here we are. Here we are. It's a clown show. I'm telling you, the world is laughing at us. They're laughing at us. We can't even get our own economic house in order. This guy is so polarizing, so toxic, so hateful, so full of spite and hatred for his political enemies and opponents. He won't even negotiate. He will not even negotiate. And now he's invented these new powers? All of a sudden, now this is what, I'm sorry, did King George III, did the British win this war? I'm sorry, did I miss the memo about 1776? A king, yes, a king can issue new debt, of course. A dictator, yes. Yes, a tyrant, yep. An emperor, yes. A president in a constitutional system, not so much. No. Congress can raise the debt limit. Congress has the power of the purse. Congress can issue new debt. You, the president, cannot. You can't. And I don't care what obscure clause you can twist and manipulate and distort and have crazy Bernie say we can do this. The facts are the facts are the facts. So I want to ask you, number one, I can't believe I'm even asking this, but a lot of people are. The world is asking this, so I have to ask it. Will we default? Will Biden now be the first president of the United States to default? And then he, the Democrats, and the media, but I repeat myself, will then turn around and blame the Republicans. So when the economy crashes, they'll say, you see, it's the Republicans' fault. Ultra MAGA. They're crazy. Do you fear a default? Number one. Number two, should we lift the debt limit without any spending reductions whatsoever? And in the end, if there is a default, who do you blame? Biden or the House Republicans? 617-266-6868 is the number. Steve in the great state of Texas. Thanks for holding, Steve, and welcome.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. It's been a while.
Welcome.
So I say if we're going to default, and we will eventually, there's no options here. We need to do it now while we still have options, while the people are still armed, and while we still have a military. Because eventually what's going to happen is these people that we owe money to, they're going to come and collect. And the only thing that we have of any value is our land and our resources.
Well, Steve, I mean, McCarthy's making the point similar to what you're saying, which is China owns so much of our foreign debt. So the more debt that we pile up, as Biden and the left keeps urging, only makes us more beholden and indebted to China. It also creates much more inflation, which makes all of us poorer. So he's saying either we start making cuts now, start getting our fiscal house in order now, or as you put it, our creditors are going to come and they're going to take us to the cleaners. I want to continue this discussion with Steve on the other side. To default or not to default? Because we're now on the verge of a default. Let's go to Steve in Texas. Well, right back to Steve. Steve, your point is, at this rate, the way we're spending, how much money we owe foreigners, the Chinese, creditors, it's better we default on our own and do what we have to do to get our house back in order before the debt becomes so bad and so out of control. Then the Chinese, the globalists, others, they come in and do the changes for us. Because you said they'll take our resources, they'll take our military. I mean, they'll strip us clean. Am I misstating your position, Steve?
No, that's 100% correct. And, yeah, we need to do a controlled reentry, I guess, to where we control, because we can default, then we can negotiate it down. We can start drilling again, sell that oil, and every single penny that's profit, put it towards that debt to pay it off. And we need to get away from globalism, the Federal Reserve, and we need to get back to the Constitution.
Steve, what do you think about Biden's play, being pressured now by Bernie, AOC, the radical left, that he needs to invoke the 14th Amendment? Don't deal with Congress, no negotiations, no back and forth, no compromise, no nothing. Invoke the 14th Amendment, essentially declare himself king, and he can now issue all the debt that he wants. He can lift a debt ceiling on his own. Will he do it? And what should the Republicans do if he does do it, as he's threatening to?
They should tell him to take a hike, but I don't even really think this is him. The guy don't even know what time of day it is. But no, tell him to take a hike. And why is Congress pretty much the only people that still get paid during a shutdown? Everybody else that's doing their job loses their paycheck, except for these clowns who are screwing everything up. We've got to get this country back, Jeff. We are in serious trouble.
Oh, amen. Steve, as always, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868. Let me put this on the table. Okay, quick log. What if Biden's calculation is, and this is the radical left's calculation, unilaterally go around Congress, invoke the 14th Amendment, neuter McCarthy, neuter Congress, neuter the House Republicans, and say, no, we're going to lift the debt ceiling on our own. On our own. We're going to issue new debt. Here we go. And we'll let the courts decide. What are the Republicans going to do anyway? Are they going to impeach? I don't think so. McCarthy has already taken that off the table. So if they're not going to impeach and they're not going to defund, then let's just go. What are the Republicans may yell, scream, shout, go in front of cameras, pound their fists. But in the end, what are they going to do? I mean, Steve is right. They'll tell him to go fly a kite. But okay, tell me to go fly a kite. I've done it anyway. My point being, what will be the reaction if they go nuclear and invoke the 14th Amendment? Or will there be no reaction? 617-266-6868 is the number. Phil in Missouri. Thanks for holding, Phil, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I don't think we're not going to default at all. We go through this every year, and everybody throws their hands in the air. Oh my God, we're going to default, and both sides, they play it to their base. And I got a message yesterday on my phone. It was some Republican group talking about the default and how we need to cut spending and asking for money. So both sides use it to their advantage, and then somehow at the upteenth hour, oh wow, we reached a deal. And the deal is always the Republicans giving in. And then it's for some type of cut in 2060. Or 2080. Look, and then they declare victory. And it's always us losing. And who do I blame? I blame the American people for electing these losers. And I agree with your last caller, Steve is right. We need to get away from these globalists, get back to the Constitution. And I maybe Trump can announce something like we're going to kick the UN out of Midtown Manhattan and just get them out of here and just make a statement. Like we are going back to our own sovereignty and we're going to have this country our way. It doesn't belong to anybody else but the American people. What do you think?
Phil, look, I love the idea of kicking the globalists out and restoring the Constitution. I'm a huge constitutionalist. As you know, I revere the Constitution and especially the Bill of Rights. Phil, I want to ask you, you're Kevin McCarthy. Just humor me. You're now the House Speaker. What would you do?
I would, if there's some way to get some advanced opinion from the Supreme Court to weigh in on this 14th Amendment and just try to go on offense and now. At least get some judges to give you some type of an opinion that this is not going to work in the long run. And then I would try to figure out some way to try to get some Democrats to come on board. Start just going after them hard. Listen, we're going to crush you with this. And just try to get them on board and get some Democrats to come on board. Because I can't believe that every Democrat wants this to happen. Like the Biden power grip can't be this strong on every Democrat in Congress. It doesn't make any sense.
No, it's true. No, you're right. Look, Manchin has come out and he's really blasted Biden, saying you don't negotiate like this. This is almost terrorist-style negotiations. He goes, you just don't do that. You don't hold the country hostage, the economy hostage. He thinks a default would be disastrous. He says there is no legal constitutional authority to invoke the 14th Amendment, that if he did it, it would be an economic disaster for the global economy and for us. You have a lot of moderate Democrats saying, why didn't he negotiate with McCarthy, Biden? Why didn't Biden negotiate with McCarthy sooner, months ago? We should have had a deal by now. So there are many Democrats who are saying he backed us into a corner by saying we'll never negotiate, we'll never negotiate, we'll never negotiate. Well, now at the 11th hour, you have to negotiate. And you're basically saying, my way, or I invoke the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment, you can't invoke it. It's not going to work. The country won't recognize it. The economy, the world won't recognize it. We're going to be seen as a banana republic. You're claiming powers you don't have. So, Phil, if you were Kevin McCarthy, he wants $4.8 trillion in spending reductions over the next 10 years. Is that enough for you, Phil?
I think he should have asked for $9 trillion and then settled for $4 trillion. That's his first mistake. He didn't ask for enough to begin with. He's got to hold the line, and if it defaults, I don't know. So, like your last caller said, so be it. Like even Trump said, maybe the time is now. Let's just take it on the chin now before
it gets even worse. And then China does it for us.
On one point, Jeff, is that these guys aren't compromised. The Democrats, they're captured. They are flat out controlled by somebody else because what they're doing is un-American. These are not Americans running the country right now. Who would do this?
Nobody would do this. Nobody. You're completely right. Phil, great call. 617-266-6868 is the number. No, I like the way Phil thinks. If you want 4.8, let's not quibble, $5 billion, then you ask for 10. I mean, that's what Trump would do. I really want 5, wink, wink, so I'll ask for 10. So, and then I get to 5 and I pretend like, oh, boy, what a negotiation. I gave up so much. Oh, boy, half a loaf is better than no loaf, but you walk away with what you want. But anyway, we shall see. McCarthy says they're going to hold the line, that he is not going to budge. Furthermore, let me just throw this out there. They want work requirements for welfare. That if you collect welfare, you collect food stamps, Section 8 housing, whatever it may be, Medicaid, if you're going to take welfare programs, you should work, not just get it for free. Do you think that's a good idea? That's a key element of the Republican plan, on top of reining in some of this out of control spending over the next 10 years. 617-266-6868. Richard in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Richard, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi.
Jeff, a couple of points I'd like to make out. First, let's talk about the deficit and straighten this out once and for all for you and all your listeners out there, okay? The national deficit right now, the funded one, is $32 trillion. Jeff, the one that the Congress and the news media does not want to talk about is the $250 trillion unfunded liability that they don't want you and all the rest of your listeners out there to know. We are in a hole for $282 trillion, Jeff. Not 32. No way. Because what they do is like when somebody goes broke and stuff like that and they can't pay their pension plan, well, the government jumps in. I'll give you a good one right off the get-go. Biden gave $360 billion to the Teamsters, Jeff, because they were broke. Well, if they hadn't got that, they'd have gone on the National Debt Fund, and basically that's where they ended up. All right? So they don't want to talk about the $250 trillion national debt that nobody wants to talk about.
Richard,
now, Jeff,
you're dead on. You're absolutely dead on. Look, just for the audience, because this can get a little bit complicated. Richard is completely correct. Let's not quibble. It's $31.7 trillion. I'm just going to round it off. We have a $32 trillion national debt. That's the public debt. Okay, that's the public debt. That's, government bonds, treasuries, notes, whatever, that we have to pay interest on. We have to pay the interest on that. On top of the $32 trillion is, Richard says 250. I've heard 130 trillion. It doesn't matter. It's way north of $100 trillion. That's unfunded Social Security, unfunded Medicare, unfunded Medicaid, unfunded pensions, as Richard's talking about. So many things that we have made promises that we are going to fund, but we don't have the means to fund them. So our country is literally hundreds of trillions of dollars in debt. In debt. We are, and every economist admits this, left, right, center, there's no dispute over this. We are the most indebted country in the history of the world. Not even close. So, to me, I'm looking at all this and I'm like, they're just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Eventually, the bill is going to come due. In fact, forget the bill. Just the interest payments on the debt are going to become so massive that basically all we're going to be doing, and that's what happens in third world countries, you're just paying interest on the debt. You can't pay for roads, schools, hospitals, pensions, Medicare, Medicaid, the military. You can't pay for anything after a while. And that's why they eventually default. So, Richard, I'm just curious, if you were McCarthy, what would you do right now? What would be your position?
What a lot of people don't understand is the fact that the debt ceiling basically is to pay the payments for last year and the years before. It's not for the future. People don't understand that. What they're proposing right now, Jeff, is not for the future. It's for the past debt that we have. That's what they're planning to pay on.
That's right.
But the thing about the 14th Amendment, Jeff, okay, what people don't understand about the 14th Amendment, if you would read it, Jeff, when you have time today, go to the 14th, 15th, 16th, whatever, you read one of them and look at the bottom. It says it's an article, Jeff. They're not amendments. These articles here only pertain to Congress. And these articles don't have they have nothing to do with you, me, or the fence post. It only pertains to Washington, D.C., a 10-mile square area that is not part of the United States. It's a corporation. It was incorporated in 1871. People don't understand that. Washington, D.C. is a total different country, people. Am I right or wrong, Jeff?
Well, you're right. Okay, well, it's the District of Columbia. The name says itself. So it's not a state. It's not even a territory. So you're right. It's a corporation within the United States. It's a district, an incorporated district within the United States. And so, and look, it's the tail wagging the dog. You're completely right. And these very politicians that have now created this mess, this absolute disaster, and now they're telling us they're the solution? I don't think so. I don't think so. Look, we have to slash the government. We got to slash it across the board. Start with 10%. 10% is not going to solve our problems, but it's a start. Get rid of the Department of Education. Get rid of the Department of Energy. Get rid of the IRS. Get rid of the FBI. Get rid of the CIA. All of these alphabet agencies, just get rid of them. So let me get this straight. We're literally about potentially on the verge of defaulting, but we're giving $125 billion to Ukraine. We have $125 billion to give to Ukraine, but we're going to default. Does this make any sense to anybody? Cut all foreign aid, all of it. Again, it's not going to solve everything, but at least we're starting to, we're starting to get our house in order. Deport every single illegal alien from the United States. Every single one. Secure the border, deport every illegal alien, because we can't afford to give 30 million, and that's how many there are now, 30 million illegals in our country. 30 million. Free food, free shelter, free health care, free clothes, free education. We can't. We literally can't. So if we start doing these basics, yes, we can get our economic house back in order. But until we even start to address it, we're just going to it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. Richard, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868. And by the way, that's why Biden, look, his handlers know there's an economic crisis. They know that they've spent this country into the ground. They know there's going to be a huge recession that's now coming. Everybody can see it. They'd rather default and try to blame it on the Republicans. Because if the economy crashes on its own, Biden and the Democrats will get the blame. And that's why they're toying with default. I mean, I'm just calling it the way it is. So they know, it's like student loan forgiveness. They knew they had no authority to do that. But let's do it and let the courts decide, and we'll just move on from there. That's what he's going to try to do potentially with the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment, nowhere does it say the president can issue new debt. So they're completely making it up. So, okay, you want to try? Try. I mean, I'm just telling you, it's going to blow up in his face. To me, the collateral damage could be you and me. That's why make the cuts now and start getting our economic house in order. Because if we don't, others, the globalists, the Chinese, international creditors, they're going to make the cuts for us. And it's not going to be pretty, believe me. 617-266-6868 is the number. Sean in Louisville. Thanks for holding, Sean, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff, let's go, Brandon.
Boy, he's screwing us really good now, huh, Sean?
He definitely is. I'm so happy to hear you talk about this because I feel like I've been calling your show for years, spouting off about this same topic. but people need to understand one of the things that makes our national debt so dangerous is, and you touched a little bit upon it, who we owe the money to. And now I know we like to say, well, it's China. Yeah, it is. And it's not just that, China's the bad guy. But other countries that are economic powers, like Germany, for example, their national debt is only about 50 or 60% of their GDP. Now, other countries out there, and the left point to this all the time, they say, well, there's other countries out there that have very high national debt compared to GDP. Japan, for example, that's the example they always go to. Japan's debt to GDP is 225%, which is true. But the difference is that our 130%, our 31 trillion, is all external international creditors.
Bingo.
Japan's national debt is all internal. Like 50% of their debt is held in one national bank. The vast majority of the rest of the debt is all bonds that have been issued to just the citizens. We owe other countries and other banks, international banks, this money, and that's what makes it so unstable, because the debt wasn't an investment in our own country and our own economy. It was an investment in other countries and other economies.
Sean, can you hang on? I've got a hard break. I want to come back to Sean. He obviously knows what he's talking about. I'm going to ask him the $64,000 question. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, later this afternoon, Biden, having returned from his trip to Hiroshima, Japan, he had to cut it short. Why? There is a looming debt ceiling deadline. About 9 days left. After this, according to Janet Yellen, the United States will default on its debt. So Biden and Kevin McCarthy are going to be meeting for a high-stakes, essentially debt ceiling negotiation. It's going to be a last-ditch effort to try to come to some negotiated settlement. Both sides, however, very far apart. Biden now is threatening to go his own way, to just blow up the talks, invoke the 14th Amendment, go around Congress completely, and lift the debt ceiling on his own. Unprecedented, never before done in the history of the United States, and almost everyone says he does not have the constitutional legal authority to do so. Let's go right back to Sean in Louisville. Sean, let me ask you, you are not Sean from Louisville. You're now House Speaker Sean. You're going nose to nose across the table from Dementia Joe. What would be your strategy? How do you think we can stave off default? Or ultimately, is default a good thing?
He is not going to, one of two things is going to happen. Either McCarthy's going to cave, or Biden is going to attempt to take a torch to the Constitution. When given the option to do the right thing or set the Constitution ablaze, the Democrats always light a match. But Trump was, and to your point that you're asking right now, Trump, to his point in the town hall with CNN, he's been proven prophetic on a lot of things. You're going to default. It's just a matter of when. You can do it now or you can do it later. And as much as it might hurt or it might be painful, I think McCarthy should just stand his ground and not budge and let Biden bury himself.
Interesting. Now, let me just ask you, Sean, to play devil's advocate. Won't the media, the Democrats, turn around and say, it's those hard right Republicans, ultra MAGA, they wouldn't budge, they wouldn't compromise. Now we have a default. We're in a recession. People are being laid off. The stock market is tanking, at least for a while. All of this economic bad news. Don't blame me. Blame MAGA. Blame the Republicans. Politically, can they use it against the Republicans in 2024?
Of course, they'll try. And I think that when it comes to a lot of the kitchen table issues, maybe it won't matter, but it still shouldn't matter. I teach my son, we have a series of character traits I go through with my boy, and I ask him, what's integrity? And he always tells me back, well, integrity is when you do the right thing without being asked, when no one's watching but God. And if McCarthy, if the Republicans have any integrity, then they're just going to say, hey, maybe we get burned, maybe we lose, but at least we go down knowing that we did the right thing.
Interesting. Sean, thank you very, very much for that call. 617-266-6868. Okay, listen now to Biden. He's asked by Fox News' Peter Doocy, well, if there's no deal on the debt ceiling and we default, no one's going to be blameless. You're going to be blamed, Mr. President, as well as the Republicans, but you will be blamed. Listen now to Biden's response. Roll cut 11, Mike.
Mr. President, on the debt limit, you said already, I've done my part. Do you think that if there's a breach, nobody will blame you?
Of course no one will blame me. I know you won't. You'll be saying Biden did a wonderful job. I know you.
Would you be blameless in a default situation?
On the merits, based on what I've offered, I would be blameless. On the politics of it, no one will be blameless. And by the way, that's one of the things that some are contemplating.
I see. Notice how he's trying to set it up. That the Republicans, this is what he's trying to position it as, they're going to blow up the economy. We're going to default. And they're going to try to pin the blame on me. So the Republicans really want us not to meet our debt obligations. The Republicans, this is what he's saying, they really want a default. And they're going to leave the American people and the peasants holding the bag just to get me. Listen now to Biden. Roll cut 11A. Mike.
I actually had, I got to be careful here. I think there are some MAGA Republicans in the House who know the damage that it would do to the economy. And because I am president and president's responsible for everything, Biden would take the blame, and that's the one way to make sure Biden's not reelected. Thank you.
That's unbelievable. I mean, that you want to talk about inflammatory. So here's what he's saying, that Republicans hate him so much that MAGA, ultra MAGA, is so evil and so nefarious and so full of hate and so irresponsible and reckless that we want a recession. They're like, millions of Americans out of work. Yeah. The economy tanking. Yeah. Stock market cratering. Yeah. People not being able to get a job, pay their bills. Yeah. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. And when you listen to McCarthy, you couldn't be more reasonable. We can't spend like this forever. We're going bankrupt. We're going broke. So let's spend a little bit less. He won't even negotiate. Benedict Biden in Hiroshima in front of a press conference, basically saying it's my way or the highway. And now his people are letting the media know he is ready to risk a possible default. In fact, worst case scenario, he will invoke the 14th Amendment and unilaterally lift the debt limit himself, which is unconstitutional, blatantly illegal, and absolutely unprecedented. So my question to you, do you fear that a default is coming? Do you fear he may trigger a massive recession? And does he have the power to invoke the 14th Amendment to lift the debt ceiling on his own? This would effectively neuter and completely subvert Congress. But that's where they are. King Joe. We've gone from King George III to King Joe. 617-266-6868 is the number. This is a really good email the Kuhner man got. Jeff, the end game. First off, I completely agree with the earlier caller, Steve from Texas. knowing that the largest holder of American debt is communist China, we have to ask ourselves, what exactly has been promised as collateral on that debt? And what do we stand to have taken from us when they call us on that debt? Secondly, I strongly suspect that a lot of this is being done to purposely crash the U.S. dollar so that they can use the crash to usher in their CBDC, central bank digital currency. Mission accomplished. A fully trackable and controllable cashless society through the strategy of problem, reaction, solution. Bingo. Que bono. Who benefits? China now controls much of our debt. The more debt we pile up, the more control China has over us. So the emailer is 1,000% correct. What do you think the Chinese are expecting to get for all this debt? You know the old expression, he who calls the tune, he who pays the fiddler calls the tune. Well, they're paying the fiddler. Hell, they own the fiddler. You own the fiddler. You call the tune. And in the end, the way we're spending, these out of control, massive, gargantuan, unheard of $1 trillion deficits year after year after year after year, of course it's going to lead to massive inflation and it's going to crash the dollar. And once the dollar is gone, they're already waiting in the wings for a global digital currency, a truly cashless society. And that's the end game. Game, set, match. Agree, disagree. 617-266-6868 is the number. What should Republicans do? Should McCarthy now hold the line at all costs? Adam in Hudson. Thanks for holding, Adam, and welcome.
Hello, Jeff.
Hi, Adam. You're on the air. Go ahead.
I'm good. I don't have a lot to say today, but a little acronym that might fit Joe, Veruca Joe. From you might remember that from the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Veruca jumping up and down and pulling her hair out till she gets what she wants. Just an acronym to throw around, because these people are pathetic. They're pathetic socialist criminal monsters. And as far as I'm concerned, we got to take this on at some point. We might as well do it now. And no time like the present. And I just want to leave it at that. Thanks, Jeff.
Adam, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I know you're pressed, but I got to ask you this. Did you ever think you would live to see the day? Just imagine if Trump, in his negotiations with Pelosi, because they had to lift the debt ceiling too. And so, Trump had to negotiate with her. And imagine what the reaction if Trump said, I'm going to invoke the 14th Amendment. I'm not going to negotiate. To hell with Congress. They don't control the purse strings. I don't care what the Constitution says. I don't care to the legislative branch. I don't care. I, Donald Trump, I'm going to find some obscure clause in the 14th Amendment. I, Donald Trump, I'm the emperor. I'm the king. I'm the dear leader. If I raise the debt limit, I'll raise it on my own. The left would have gone absolutely apoplectic. And yet here we have Biden saying, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it and let the chips fall where they may. I mean, Adam, if Trump did this, what do you think the reaction would be? And yet this is the same liberals, the same Democrats who demonize Trump as a quote-unquote threat to democracy. He was the bad guy. He was the dictator. Yet here you got Biden now openly telling us, I am the king. I will issue new debt, and there's nothing Congress can do about it.
Well, just got to remember the left are a bunch of rabid, lunatics foaming at the mouth. Their base are even more so. They're left-leaning base of people, uneducated buffoons. And as far as I'm concerned, as Saul Alinsky taught us, the ends justify the means always, and not to go abide by that ideology means you're not really a real radical. As far as I'm concerned, when things are as out of control as they are, why would we wait any longer to try to get things back on track? We need, at some point you got to say, if not now, when? And just to wrap it up on my end, I just implore the good patriotic Americans to just step up as much as you possibly can. Many have already done everything they need to, and have already paid the price for what we have here. And please, Supreme Court justices, step up to the plate on this and be ready to get involved and solve this as well.
Amen. Adam, thank you very much for that call. Amen. No, look, this has to be fast-tracked. If he's going to invoke the 14th Amendment, this has got to be fast-tracked to the Supreme Court. It needs to be 9-0. They need to slap him down like no one has ever been slapped down before. There's no question in my mind. Forgive me. No question in my mind that this is now what needs to be done. And no, if I'm McCarthy, here's exactly what I come out with today. He threatens to use the 14th Amendment one more time. It's time to invoke the 25th Amendment. You want to start invoking stuff? We can invoke, because you are unfit for office. You don't have the power to do it. And if you think you have the power to do it, then you truly are unhinged and deranged, and you need to go. You're like, King George III ended up being mad. And we may have another mad wannabe king. So we've gone from King George III to Joe Biden. 617-266-6868 is the number. Jeff in Virginia. Thanks for holding, Jeff, and welcome.
Oh, good morning, Jeff. How are you doing?
Good. How are you, Jeff?
Oh, wonderful. Happy Monday. Yesterday was my birthday, so I'm in a great mood.
Happy birthday, Jeff. I hope you had a wonderful day.
I had a great day. So, real quick, if I am in debt and I need money in a hurry, I have a garage sale. So my theory is, why don't we just sell California? It doesn't do us any good. All the labels I read with all the warnings always say that California causes cancer and reproductive harm. Just get rid of California. We don't need it.
Jeff, I'm just curious. If you were, your family was in serious trouble, you're spending way too much money, and you're drowning in debt, and your credit cards are maxed. You've hit the limit. Honestly, what would your family do? Would you just say, let's lift the limit and just keep spending? Or would Jeff and his family sit down and say, okay, we got to cut. And here's a list of things we're going to cut. Because that's what we would do in my home, Jeff. But that's me. Would you do the same thing?
It's a joke. I have a credit card, and it says, let's just say my limit is $30,000.
Jeff, please, I'm up against a break. Hang on, Jeff. 617-266-6868. Okay. Will there be a deal? Today, it's being billed as a last-ditch effort, high-stakes meeting between Kevin McCarthy and Dementia Joe. King Biden. McCarthy says rather than going forward, they're going backward. And he's now warning everybody, believe it or not, a default is now possible. Will there be a default? And ultimately, is it good or bad for the United States? I want to go right back to Jeff in Virginia. Jeff, you got a family. You're spending way too much money. You've maxed out all the credit cards. The banks now are threatening to start foreclosing, seizing assets. What would Jeff in Virginia do? Would you continue spending like there's no tomorrow? Or would the family sit down and say, it's time to start cutting?
I don't know what kind of fantasy world Joe Biden lives in, but when I max out my credit card and then, ooh, look, there's a big screen TV. I want to buy it. Right away, it's like Colonel Klink. Request denied. No, they just say no. They say no. They say no. How can I tell the bank, but I want this TV. It's the best. I can't. No, it's just no. Why are we shoveling all of our money to every country in the world, but not taking care of our debts? I don't understand.
Oh, Jeff, you're dead on. You're absolutely dead on. And to me, what I find incredible is we're sending all this money to Ukraine, all this money to countries around the world, and we're 10 days away from defaulting. I mean, literally, we're 10 days away from defaulting. And nobody sees the contradiction. Nobody sees how absurd the whole thing is. Jeff, do you think McCarthy will hold the line? He says he will, or do you think he's going to cave and surrender?
I just hope the Republicans don't continue their paper tiger words, and never do anything. They never, ever do anything. And we have millions of people, like, we're yelling at the TV like our favorite football team is losing, yelling at the quarterback. Why didn't you throw it? Why didn't you throw it? The Republicans aren't throwing the ball. They're not doing anything to help the team.
Jeff, I love your analogies. Jeff, thank you very, very much for that call. Throw the freaking ball. Take it to the other side. For once, play to win. Can you play to win? 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, let me ask you, okay? Because this is roughly the situation we're in as a country. Your family, you bring in about $100,000 a year. Okay, say the husband, the wife, whatever, the two breadwinners in the family. Nice. You live well. You live comfortably. But you've been living way beyond your means. Way beyond your means. You bring in $100,000, but you're spending $130,000. And you've been spending like this year after year after year after year. So your spending is much higher than what you totally bring in. You bring in good money. You bring in $100,000, but your appetites, you spend. You've got extra cars. You've got a boat. You've got a yacht. You go on multiple vacations. You're buying all the latest furniture. You're throwing wild parties. You're eating out all the time. Whatever. You're splurging. And now you're millions and millions of dollars in debt. So you're spending $130,000. You're taking in $100,000, but you've got a massive multi-million dollar debt that you've accumulated. Now the banks are saying it's time to pay up. Your credit cards, which you've been using, are all maxed out. That's it. As Jeff put it, request denied, request denied, request denied. Now, honestly, what would you do? What would you do? Is your response, let's get another credit card, let's just keep borrowing and keep spending, or just raise the debt limit. Raise the limit on the creded card. Make it go from $20,000 to $30,000 or $30,000 to $40,000. And we just keep spending. In fact, let's even spend more. You know, hey, we've never been to Paris. We've never been to Paris. Let's all go first class to Paris. Yeah. Would you do that? Or would you do what most normal Americans do? I.e., the Kuhner household. Tighten the belt. No, we don't need that second car. It's okay. Get rid of the car. No, we're not. No more vacations. No, we're not going to eat out. And if we do eat out, it'll be McDonald's once in a blue moon. In other words, you go down a checklist and you go cut, 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 cut. At least until you get to $100,000 that you're spending. So at a bare minimum, you're not spending more than what you're taking in. Ideally, wouldn't you get to 90 or 80,000 spending? So you say now the $10,000, $20,000 that we have surplus, this goes to the bank, whatever it is, and we start to slowly get on a payment scheme to get out of debt. That's what I would do. You would consolidate the debt and then slowly try to pay the debt off. Now, essentially, that's McCarthy's plan. Okay, in a nutshell, to give him his due. It's realistic, it's doable, it's sustainable. It does eventually get us back on some kind of fiscal economic discipline. And the Democrats are saying it's dead on arrival. It's dead on arrival, and we're going to be spending trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of money that we don't have. And if you don't agree with us, I'm invoking the 14th Amendment, and we're just going to lift the borrowing limit on our own. So, you tell me, if you love your family, if you don't want to lose everything and have the banks seize everything and foreclose and take over, would you do what what Biden is doing, or would you do what the Republicans are doing? Let me ask you, your family's in serious debt. Do you spend more or do you spend less? In my home, we spend less. But that's me. I'm ultra MAGA. 617-266-6868. This apparently now is an extremist position. So I guess I'm an extremist. Raymond in Arlington. Thanks for holding, Raymond, and welcome.
Hey, Kuhner. I love you in a non-sexual way. Real quick.
Thank you, Raymond.
Way out of this. Before it even happened, way out of this. Getting a receipt, bro.
Raymond, for some reason, there's a connection issue. Maybe you're in a tunnel or something. So let's see if we can fix that connection. And then we're going to come back to Raymond. Dave in Dorchester. Thanks for holding, Dave, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Dave.
Jeff, what's getting me aggravated right now is that they're talking about the debt ceiling, and he wants to turn around and give Zelensky, that I heard yesterday on the news, another $253 billion. And at the same time, Jeff, every night when I'm watching TV, they're showing the commercials of the people who have nothing in Ukraine, and showing, all the war scenes and the elderly people who could barely walk. But they're not getting nothing. And then you got these programs asking people to send money to the church programs to send these people food boxes, and they can barely stand up, Jeff. Where's all the money going? Because it ain't going to the people who have nothing over there because of Biden's big mouth and everything. It's not like it's being distributed to the people who really need the help, who could just get around and barely walk. It makes me sick, Jeff.
Oh, you're right, Dave. It is sickening. No, I'll tell you where the money's going. It's going to three groups. It's going to Zelensky and his gang of criminals, these oligarchs who are embezzling and laundering the money. And in fact, Zelensky now, you got to read Seymour Hersh, one of his latest pieces. He's got Zelensky dead to rights. He's got Zelensky embezzling. He caught him. Zelensky personally embezzling $400 million that we know of our aid. Never mind billions that his other members in his cabinet and entourage have stolen. So the Ukrainian politicians, those crooks, are stealing. Number two, they're sending the money back to Biden and people in Washington, kickbacks. And number three, it's the military-industrial complex. In other words, we send over $100 billion, but we're giving it to ourselves because they're just buying weapons made here in the United States. So the big defense contractors, the big donors to Biden and to Mitch McConnell and to the rhinos and to all these Democrats, they're the ones getting filthy rich. Meanwhile, Ukrainians are dying. Russians are dying too, but Ukrainians are dying. Their homes obliterated, villages, towns in rubble. And war is good business. And it makes the military-industrial complex rich, and it makes politicians rich. And that's where all the money is going, Dave.
Unbelievable.
But, Dave, we're on the verge of a default. We're sending hundreds of billions to Ukraine, but we're on the verge of a default, Dave. I mean, does this make sense to you?
No sense. And what are we paying taxes for? We might as well start getting jobs under the table instead of having to freaking pay taxes to this clown.
That's what illegals do, Dave. They collect all the welfare, social, government assistance, all of it, and work under the table and pay no taxes. Dave, maybe you and I should do that. Dave, if you want to set up a landscaping business, I'll put my family on welfare, you put your family on welfare, and we can do landscaping, you and me, and never pay taxes again a day in our life.
Laundromats I go to, the laundromat's full of them. Nobody speaking English. It's ridiculous. This guy told me the other day when I went into one of the stores, he says in Walmart, they're sleeping on the floor as you're walking into Walmart.
Incredible. Well, Dave, look, if you and I set up a landscaping business, we can say, hey, we speak English. That's how we're going to beat out the illegals, Dave. We can make money under the table, but we'll tell them, hey, no, parlez anglais. We understand English. You can talk to us in English, Dave. That's how we'll outmuscle the competition. What do you think, my friend?
Straight up, Jeff. Maybe we ought to have fentanyl in our pocket and sell fentanyl too.
Oh, that's now you're thinking like an entrepreneur, Dave. Huh? We could do a little drug dealing on the side as well. Huh?
Sure, why not? Get the old psychedelics back from the old days.
There you go, my friend. So, Dave, we have a fallback. Things go bad, Dave. You and I have a fallback position. Dave, God bless you. Thank you for that call, my friend. And we'll be living in a nice little villa, a nice little mansion, huh? And I'm going to be telling Ashton and Ava, don't you ever make fun of the United States or the American flag. Those welfare checks, that's from the gringo. Yeah, the food stamps. Hey, what are you talking about? The free education, the mass health. I got all. Hey, do you guys have health care? Yeah, Daddy. Thanks to the taxpayer. Come on now. Show a little respect. 617-266-6868. We're not paying taxes, but they're paying taxes. Raymond, we got him back. Raymond in Arlington. Thanks for holding, Raymond, and welcome.
Hey, Kuhner. I don't know what happened. I guess the phone just disconnected.
That's
I don't
okay.
know if I'm still
That's
on the
okay.
air with you.
Raymond, what's on your mind, my friend?
Well, I was just thinking the only way that we can get through this, the only way it should have went through this is everybody gets a receipt for the ballot. If we got a receipt for our ballot, we wouldn't be in this mess currently. That's the only thing I could say, and that's the only thing I have.
Raymond, what do you think's going to happen? Do you think McCarthy will blink? Do you think Biden will blink? Do you think we're going to default? And do you think Biden is crazy enough, under the influence of the left, so much, so reckless, that lunatic is going to invoke the 14th Amendment to just lift the debt ceiling on his own, go right around Congress, break every law on the books?
I believe it's a political entertainment now. There is no political party, left or right. It's just entertainment. No different than watching football, no different than, watching the WWE. It's over. And if we don't get a receipt for our ballot, that's it. It's over.
You're saying it's just a show. The whole thing is just a show.
It's sad. It's sad, but that's all I got.
Raymond, very interesting. Raymond, thank you very much for that call. Well, we're going to find out. I mean, if McCarthy is really serious, if he really means what he says, and he wants to stop this country from going off a fiscal cliff, and for us to go bankrupt as a country, he's going to hold the line. He's going to say, well, I mean, these are minor cuts. These are not even cuts. They're just reducing the level of growth in spending over 10 years. We're still going to be spending 1% more on everything for 10 years. Nothing is being cut. So we've got a record revenue coming in. This is his argument. We have a record revenue coming in. Let the revenue keep coming in and just hold spending to 1% growth for 10 years. And this knocks off about $5 trillion. And so we start at least getting some control over our finances. Now, if he can't hold the line on this, I mean, then it really is all entertainment. It really is, as Raymond puts it, world wrestling entertainment. It's just professional wrestling. I pretend to hit you, you pretend to hit me. I yell at you, you yell at me. I body slam you, you body slam me. And really, the whole thing is rigged behind closed doors. The only ones that get rich are them. And we're all being played for suckers. 617-266-6868 is the number. Agree, disagree. Andy in Halifax. Now, Andy, is this Halifax, Canada, or a different Halifax?
Yeah, so good morning, Jeff, and thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure.
You are definitely the voice of sanity in an otherwise insane world.
Thank you.
No, this is Halifax, Massachusetts.
That's what I figured. But they were telling me, no, it's Halifax, Canada. Halifax, Nova Scotia. But the second you came on, I said, that's not a Canadian accent. Andy doesn't finish every sentence with A. I said, so no, it's got to be Halifax, Massachusetts. Go ahead, Andy.
In any case, so we have the BRICS nations that have gone away from the dollar. And I just saw yesterday that now we have the 10 Asian nations that have dropped the dollar also. I don't think it's a question of if. It is most definitely a question of when the dollar is going to cease to be the world reserve currency. And, just to pile it on, we're in a world of hurt. And, I don't know about everybody else, but I'm getting ready. I am, I used to laugh at the preppers, but they're spot on. I am prepping. I am getting ready because it's coming. There's no avoiding it. To spend the amount of money that they're spending it, and to know that they're sending it to nations and countries that hate us and that are stealing our hard tax dollars, why would we want to pay taxes? Well, I don't get it.
Andy, I mean, I'm not trying to wind you up, but, you're so right. Let me just, kind of reinforce your point. It's not just that we're sending it to countries around the world who hate us, a la like China, as an example, or being stolen from us like Ukraine. But a lot of the money is being sent here in the United States to illegal aliens who also hate us and who openly admit, look, there was a big interview that one of Biden's top economic advisors gave over the weekend, and she completely spilled the beans. She said, no, they're not fleeing persecution. Everybody knows they're not fleeing persecution. These aren't so-called asylum seekers. No, they're economic migrants. She goes, no, they're here to come to take advantage of our social services, which are incredibly generous, and then to, quote, do the jobs that Americans don't want to do, which is a lie. But the point is to make money. So they're here to make money. So we are spending untold amounts of money to give illegal aliens EBT, welfare, Section 8 housing, food stamps, I'm not kidding, phones, jeans, sneakers, free education, free health care. I mean, I love my health care, don't get me wrong. I pay through the nose for my health insurance for me and my family. It's all free. It's all free. All free. And then they work under the table, no taxes, and they make even more money. If we're lucky, they work under the table, they're not dealing drugs or, fentanyl or committing crimes or whatever. So we're sending it out and we're sending it in. And it's all being stolen, wasted, and squandered.
The kicker to that is the 6 million plus that are here illegally. The feds come up with this app where they can apply for their court date, and there are so many people. There are court dates 3, 5, 7, some of them even 10 years into the future. These court dates, and we pay the entire time for that person. 10 years we're paying for that person or family or 6 million plus to be here. We're paying them while they be here. And, I heard that somewhere in upstate New York, the hotels and motels are so freaking full of these illegals that they're now busing them into upstate New York, and they're actually kicking out our veterans from these hotel motels to make room for these illegal immigrants. I about lost my excuse my French.
Yeah, you lost your mind. No, I hear you. You lost your... No, we get it. No, look, in New York City, you can look it up. Eric Adams, the Moonbat mayor, has now admitted over half of all hotels, motels in New York City are now filled with illegal aliens. They're saying, we don't have tourists coming because there's nowhere to stay. 617-266-6868 is the number. Mike and I were having a really interesting off-air discussion. And so, Mike was saying to me, I think, no, Biden is crazy enough to do it. It's obvious what his strategy is. He's using the 14th Amendment, or threatening to use the 14th Amendment, to be more accurate, as leverage to get the Republicans to back off their position. In other words, no, I'm not going to agree to these potential spending reductions over the next 10 years. No. And if you keep insisting, well, I'm going to go my own way, and I'll just invoke the 14th Amendment. The problem is, if the Republicans hold the line, he is crazy enough to do it. And if he invokes the 14th Amendment, then we have a constitutional crisis, a legal crisis, frankly, an economic crisis, because to the world, that means we're defaulting. But we're not defaulting because we're saying we want to restructure. We're defaulting because this guy is so crazy, he thinks he has powers that he doesn't have. It's going to be a mess, an absolute mess. 617-266-6868. And, I said to Mike, I go, look, to show you how crazy this idea is, because we have a system of checks and balances, separation of powers. Congress does the spending. Congress controls the purse strings. They're the legislative branch. So, to be fair to Congress, we don't have a balanced budget amendment. I think we should, but we don't have a balanced budget amendment. If Congress wants to spend more, in other words, run a deficit or a debt, that is the legal prerogative of Congress. If they want to issue new debt, that's the legal prerogative of Congress. The president has no power. It would literally be akin to, say, the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. Just to give you an example, with the Dobbs decision, and Biden coming out and saying, nah, I'm canceling the ruling. Unilaterally. Nah, it's not happening. Like, what? No, it's just not happening. What would everybody say? But you're not a king. You're not a dictator. The Supreme Court has spoken. It's its prerogative. It has made its ruling. You have to abide by it. If Biden said, no, I'm sorry, no, I'm telling everybody, do not obey the Supreme Court. I have just unilaterally, on my own, canceled the Dobbs decision. The country would be like, are you crazy? That's not your job as president. You don't have that power or authority. Now, remember when Biden called Trump a dictator just for issuing executive orders, which he had every right to do. Now he's threatening to invoke the 14th Amendment to literally unilaterally lift the debt ceiling on his own, going right around Congress, right around the legislative branch. That's why everybody says he's going to be laughed out of court. They're going to look at him and say, are you on crack? Like, really? Are you nuts? Is it time to invoke the 25th Amendment? But this is now where we are. Like, I mean, I'm sorry. I can't believe we're even having this conversation. 617-266-6868 is the number. Barry in Newton. Thanks for holding, Barry, and welcome.
Hey, how you doing, Jeff?
Hi.
I want you to get scared about the national debt. If you think about the value of every home in Massachusetts, how much do you think that is?
You mean the overall value of every home?
In Massachusetts, yeah.
What do you think it is, Barry?
Well, I don't know, but I checked on Zillow for the United States, and it's $33 trillion about a year ago. So it's probably a little bit less now because home values have gone down. But let's just say it's $33 trillion. What's the entire capitalization of the New York Stock Exchange?
Oh, I don't know, Larry. Barry, forgive me, Barry.
Down to like 35 now. What's the value of all personal property in this country?
Oh, I don't know, Barry.
About 10 trillion, I think, more or less. What's the value of all factories and roadways and everything else? I think that's another 10 trillion. So if you add them up, you get something around 90 trillion dollars. That's the value of everything that we have created in this country since 1776. Now, what's the amount that we owe? 33 trillion for the national debt. The states and municipal counties, localities and everything else, they owe another 35 trillion. People don't even think about that. The states and localities and municipalities owe more than the national debt combined. What do we owe on Social Security? How much are we in the hock on that? At least 20 trillion. At least. When you add them all up, we owe more than we've got.
Oh, no question. No question. Barry, look, you've given me some very interesting statistics. Let me give you one. What do you think what's the debt on you, Barry? How much do you owe the government? You, me, per capita. What is the debt that you, me, every citizen have? Debt per citizen ratio. How much do you think you owe the government?
But it's not that great as on me as a person. But if you say me as a family, since I'm the only one that works in my family, if you do by household, and then if you do it by working individual, it comes to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
$298,000, Barry. Let's not quibble over $2,000. $300,000 per family. And it's only going to get worse and worse and worse. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay. Couple of texts I want to read. The text line, by the way, burning up, on fire. You can text us 70470, 70470. This is from 917. Jeff, why are the Republicans not doing anything? Because the Republicans and the Democrats are two wings on the same bird of prey. They are the predators. We are the prey. Well, you're starting to see the uniparty. I mean, McCarthy is very mild demands, and so many Republicans, his knees are already buckling. I mean, it really is incredible. We'll see what happens later today, but I wouldn't be shocked if McCarthy caves. I wouldn't be shocked. This is from 781. Jeff, that's the point. The Dems want to default. They want to crash the entire system and then plan to clean up the pieces for their globalist partners. A broken nation enables communists, Bolsheviks, socialists, and their globalist allies to seize full and total control. Break the economy, and they control us. To me, I've never seen a country decline as quickly as the United States has under Biden in the last 2.5 years. It really, I have to say, from that point of view, it's genius. It's absolute genius. And if he invokes the 14th Amendment and breaks all talks with McCarthy, oh, you're going to see economic pandemonium, absolute chaos. 617-266-6868. Bill in Stoneham. Thanks for holding, Bill, and welcome.
Jeff.
Hi, Bill.
I think Biden has got enough. Okay, he got the money from us. He wants the money on the back door, and we should just impeach him. Period. It's got to stop. This name calling and game playing and pussyfooting around is too much.
Well, Bill, look, you know, I'm with you 1,000% on this, Bill. I've been calling for his impeachment now for a long time. I'm getting heavily criticized for it. I don't care. I believe it's the right thing to do. But we had Jim Jordan on 3 weeks in a row. 3 weeks in a row, I asked him the same question, essentially, and he gave me the same answer. McCarthy has to say yes. They have to have unanimity in the Republican conference. They don't have unanimity. They don't have unanimity. They can't get to 218. So they don't have the votes. So, Bill, the answer I get from Republican leadership is we don't have the votes. What say you?
Well, I think you're right. Okay, I know you're right. We're just too easy. We need to get the votes. And the American people are behind Congress if they get their crap together. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I agree. No, Bill, look, the American people want Biden impeached. Poll after poll after poll now shows most Americans want Biden impeached. Over 42% strongly want him impeached. No, look, to give Pelosi her due, to give the devil her due, there was no support among many Democrats in Congress to initially impeach Trump. But she banged the table and got her media people to start pushing impeachment, and it gained momentum, and before you know it, she votes. So, look, if McCarthy says, let's impeach, and then all the other top Republicans say, let's impeach, before you know it, they'll get to 218. But they don't want to impeach. And that's the question we have to ask ourselves. Why? Why? Bill, thank you very much for that call. Why are they such yellow-livered cowards? Why? And, I think one of the reasons why, in fact, I know, one of the reasons why Biden is even contemplating using the 14th Amendment, he goes like, so what are the Republicans going to do? Here, I'm going to thumb my nose at them. I'm going to thumb my nose at the Constitution. I'm going to do something that's so brazenly illegal. What is McCarthy going to do? What are the Republicans going to do? Run on Fox News and yell and scream and complain and whine? What are they going to do? In other words, what Biden is really saying is, you don't have the spine. You don't have the cojones, as the Spanish would put it, to really come after me. So you know what? You don't give me what I want? You don't back down? Okay, I'll suspend the negotiations, break them off, and I'll invoke the 14th Amendment, and I'll lift the debt ceiling on my own. What's the worst that can happen? I get shot down by the courts? Who cares? By then, I've humiliated you. So he doesn't, it's obvious he doesn't fear McCarthy. He doesn't respect McCarthy. And he knows that he can roll McCarthy. 617-266-6868. That's why you never take impeachment off the table before you've even begun. And that's what the Republicans did. They made a decision because according to them, they looked at the focus groups and Frank Luntz, who shares the same house with Kevin McCarthy, wink, wink. So there's Frank Luntz with little Kevin, and Frankie said, oh, my focus groups say the suburban voters, the soccer moms, they want you to govern. The moderates want for you to govern, to get along, to cooperate, to negotiate. The moderates, God bless the moderates. The moderates don't want confrontation. The moderates don't want impeachment. But they impeached Trump twice for nothing. That didn't seem to bother the moderates. Yeah, but come on now. Let that go. No, that's a Republican. When there's a Republican, then you can play smash mouth football. But we're talking now about a Democrat. So the moderates say they don't like impeachment. So he took it off the table the first day he was sworn in as Speaker. Biden now knows that. So Biden says, they're not going to do anything to me. I can do whatever I want. And now it is King Joe. It is King Joe Biden. 617-266-6868. Peter in Florida. Thanks for holding, Peter, and welcome.
Good morning. I'd like to make a prediction and a recommendation. But first, I want to say I'm shocked by how intelligent your callers are. So my prediction comes from 1932 in Germany, when $1 American dollar would get you 4.3 trillion marks. So the Germans switched over to the Deutschmark, which in our case would be the digital currency. They will switch to the digital currency. However, my recommendation is buy goldbacks. Greenbacks are worth less than monopoly money. Goldbacks are real gold. So each piece of mylar, shaped like a dollar bill, has 1/1000th of an ounce of gold, or 1/200th, or 1/100th. And I've been investing in them. That's what I recommend. I suspect I'll be buying gasoline with them in the very near future.
Well, Peter, look, I got to say, there's a real rush now towards gold. And I'm not just saying in terms of here in the United States, because they can see where it's, what's going to happen with inflation and all of this out of control spending. The Russians and the Chinese, along with these BRIC nations, are now talking about an alternative currency, a world currency to rival the dollar. And they want it backed by gold. They're going to say, no. We're not just going to have it printed from some central bank. It's going to be backed by gold. As you put it, real. Something with real value. So we better be very careful, because under Biden, we may easily lose the dollar as the world's reserve currency. And if that happens, President Trump is completely correct. It will be a body blow to our economy, the likes we have not seen in over 100 years. I mean, even economists across the board say, if the U.S. dollar collapses as the world's currency, reserve currency, we are in big, big, big trouble, because then our debt is going to crush us. We still have a lot of power in the world because people rely on our dollar. But if they don't rely on our dollar anymore, whoa, then you're looking at now a northern Mexico. We are now looking at becoming the United States of Mexico. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, listen now to Kevin McCarthy. This was over the weekend, saying the White House now under tremendous pressure from Bernie, the Sandinistas, AOC, the Squad, the progressive socialist wing of the Democratic Party. They are not budging on acquiescing to any spending cuts. They are willing to take this now all the way to the brink, and they believe they can use the 14th Amendment to lift the debt ceiling on their own. Listen now to McCarthy saying, don't be shocked if there is a potential or imminent default. Roll cut 22, Mike.
What is a debt limit? It's giving your child a credit card. They charged it all the way up. But year after year after year, all you did was raise the debt limit. So now you have to pay this credit card, but this credit card has more money on it than you make in an entire year. Our debt is larger than our entire economy by an extra 20%. So before we raise that debt limit, shouldn't we look at ways that we can save money, curve what we're spending? Because we've been spending more than we've been bringing in for the last 21 years. And so all we're simply saying is, let's spend less, let's pull back the COVID money that we haven't spent before, work requirements, help people get jobs, and you know what? Let's do some permitting reform, cutting the red tape so people can build things in America. And I think we could probably find a pretty good agreement to be able to move forward. But the White House will not budge.
Well, yeah, because they're banking on that you will cave, like Republicans always cave. That's all the Democrats are telling Biden is relax. These are the same old Republicans. When push comes to shove, they wave the white flag of surrender. So today, this afternoon, huge meeting between one-on-one between Biden and McCarthy. Let's see what happens. The stakes could not be higher. 617-266-6868. Lines are jammed. Dan in North Andover. Thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Dan?
Actually, you're not. No, you're actually not good because of all the stuff going on. We know that, Jeff. It's getting worse and worse and worse. Hey, Jeff, I've been calling the show a number of years, and I've been a listener since you first got to Boston. I used to listen when you used to cover for Michael Savage, so a long time. And I've been saying since the start of the pandemic, I can't figure out what this is all about. I can't figure it out. I think I figured it out. So this week I'm down in D.C. Last week I was down in D.C. and I met with 3 congressmen, Northern Florida, and I met with the Senate staff for Florida and South Carolina. So one of the brand new, nice guy, really nice guy, Aaron Bean out of Florida's 4th District, brand new to Congress, right? Because it's a newly created position, newly created district. So I'm meeting with him, and I said to him, Kat Kamek blew me off for an appointment. You know who Kat Kamek is, right?
Yes.
Jeff, she's the woman, very outspoken woman, extremely. She is the next Marjorie Taylor Greene, I hope, right? So I said, she blew off my appointment. He said, yeah. He goes, you see how bad it is. She's fighting this FBI thing. He says to me, Dan, he says, I didn't realize how bad it was up here until I got here. First term. He goes, he said, I heard the stories. I saw some of the reports. He said, I had no idea how bad it is. So, number one. Number two, right? So I think I finally figured it out, Jeff, because I met with the CFPB, one of the undersecretaries, but a guy who formerly he was the acting head of the CFPB for about 6 months during the interim. He said to me, we're getting, more and more concerned with this office space glut. People aren't using up office. We're worried about commercial mortgages coming due. So, Jeff, where do you work from?
Well, it depends. Sometimes I'm in the studio. Sometimes I'm at home.
Yeah. So, like most people today, when you can, you work from home. Right? Would you rather drive to Boston and try to have to get home at noontime or whenever you actually can get out of the studio? No, right? You work from home as much as possible.
Yes.
So people signing contracts for employment today, that's the number one thing they're asking for. Want to be able to work from home. Want to be, I have a couple of employees. They work from their boats in the Caribbean, Jeff. Their boats in the Caribbean. Right? They have Wi-Fi. They're on it. They're on every day. They do their work. They do their conference calls, but they work from boats in the Caribbean. So I think I'm thinking, why did we push the COVID thing, right? So you remember COVID? Oh, 2 weeks, everybody 2 weeks, you'll be home for 2 weeks. But immediately, gyms, gymnasium, health clubs closed down. Now, if you owned a pizza shop and they told you couldn't be open for 2 weeks, would you put up a closed sign forever? Jeff?
No, I'm listening, Dan. So, Dan, I'm just curious. Dan. So what's your conclusion?
Here's what they did. They deliberately crashed the commercial real estate market, take over the office space. Now the government can take over the office space. We can house these illegal aliens coming over the border, number one. And number two, we can push towards socialism.
Interesting.
Right? So couple this. I get to ride home. I get on the plane. It's a very nice woman sitting next to me. I strike up a conversation with her. She's Sudanese, from the Sudan. Extremely smart woman. Boy, did we have a conversation, Jeff. Boy, did we have a conversation. She thinks we blew out the COVID thing way above what it should have been. So I think I figured out the plan, Jeff. I've been trying to, since March of 2020, but I think I found it.
I think you may have found it, Dan. I agree with you. It makes perfect sense. You have people working from home. That frees up a lot of real estate office space. Where you're going to house all these illegals that you're allowing into the country to pour in. You put them in there, but you got to take care of them. You got to feed them. You got to, clothe them. You got to make sure they stay there. They have permanent shelter. And now you move in and you nationalize. And there's your socialism. Boom. Right there. Right there. Dan. Always interesting, fascinating. Thank you so much for that call. 617-266-6868. You also blow up the economy. You wipe out the middle class. You really crater the stock market. You bring about a great recession. Well, hello. Nationalization. Let the government step in. You've got socialism. This is what the Democrats have been planning, I believe, now for years. That's why they've been doing everything they can to hollow out and destroy what's left of the United States. To me, I think there's no question. And so for him to invoke the 14th Amendment, on the brink, when we're, days away from a potential debt default, it's one of the most irresponsible, reckless, insane things to do. It's insanity. And for him to go 90 plus days and not even negotiate with McCarthy, well, that, to me, he wants a crisis. And so either you cave, you just surrender, and we just keep lifting the national credit card and just keep spending as we want to keep spending, and then just have a spending blowout, or we then create an economic crisis through invoking the 14th Amendment. Either way, door one, socialism. Door two, socialism. We're going to find out now what McCarthy is made of. 617-266-6868 is the number. Now, let me throw one more very important log on the fire. We have no money. To me, there's no question now. We are so broke as a country, it's not even funny. So it's not just, as many of you have pointed out, the $32 trillion national debt that we have. It's all of the unfunded liabilities, which are way over $100 trillion. So clearly, we are living way beyond our means. To me, there's no doubt about that. Which then begs the question, if we're 10 days away from defaulting, this is Janet Yellen saying this, not me, The Treasury Secretary says by June 1st, we're out of money. By June 1st, we can't pay our bills. Some bills are going to have to go unpaid. And we may even need to have a partial government shutdown. And it's going to escalate and reverberate from that. So according to her, we are 10 days away from a debt default. And what is Biden doing? Not only is he in Hiroshima, but in Hiroshima, he meets with Zelensky and finally gives Zelensky what he's always wanted, F-16 fighter jets. So listen now to this. The Pentagon claims it was all a mistake. They had an accounting error. And in fact, that we owe Ukraine an extra $3 billion. So all of a sudden, they're like, well, geez, we played around with this decimal and that decimal, and we suddenly realized, holy shamoly, we owe Ukraine an extra $3 billion. Then, late last week, Biden announced another $375 million weapons package to Ukraine. So, $3 billion more, and then another $375 million more. So
there was this very bizarre admission from the Pentagon this week of an accounting error that suggested that the U.S. has at least $3 billion that it didn't know it had that it can use for Ukraine aid. That's a hell of an accounting error, and it provides a lot of fodder to critics of U.S. aid to Ukraine and critics who say there's not enough oversight going on. Are you concerned about this accounting error?
Well, one thing I just want to make clear, that is not money that went out the door and disappeared. That is not a waste of that $3 billion. No. It is simply a tally of how much military equipment we have given them. And the way that the Pentagon was counting it was, what's the replacement cost for the equipment we provide, rather than just the actual cost of that equipment. Once you make that adjustment, it turns out we have an additional $3 billion that we can spend to provide even more weapons to Ukraine.
Yeah, look at that. Look at Shazam. It's just incredible. $120 billion flying out the door. And it's $3 billion. There's an extra $3 billion. We didn't account for it. It's just lying there. It's just, now, to give fake Tapper his due, how the hell do you miss $3 billion with a B? Okay, that's, as he put it, one hell of an accounting error. Let that go. Just let that go. Now we're on the verge of a default, but that's okay. We're going to send them $3 more billion. Then we're going to send them $375 million. But now, the one thing the Ukrainians have wanted, we're going to give it to them. F-16 fighter jets. Biden met with Zelensky in Japan at Hiroshima G7 summit in private. He's gotten now a commitment from the British. The British will be sending F-16s. Other European NATO allies will be sending F-16s. And guess who's going to train them? You guessed it, the good old US of A. We are going to be training the Ukrainian fighters so they can start using F-16 fighter jets. Roll cut 6. Mike.
You know, in my private meeting with President Zelensky after the G7 meeting and with his staff, I told him the United States, together with our allies and partners, is going to begin training Ukrainian pilots in fourth-generation fighter aircraft, including F-16s, to strengthen Ukraine's Air Force as part of a long-term commitment to Ukraine's ability to defend itself. We provided to last year all that they needed to deal with what they were dealing with at the moment. And that's when now we're moving in the direction of putting them in a position to be able to defend themselves in ways beyond what they've had to deal with so far.
Okay, now notice now. This is getting very frightening. To me, much more than the debt deadline. This is the real danger. Don't get me wrong. We default, him invoking the 14th Amendment, the constitutional mess, the legal mess, the economic uncertainty, the paralysis. It's going to be very damaging. What did they tell us from the beginning? No, never, never. We're not going to send our battle tanks. They did. No. We're not going to send them Patriot missiles. Never would we send our air defenses. They did. No, Jeff, no. We're not going to send long-range missiles. They did. Then it was, no. F-16 fighter jets? Absolutely not, Jeff. Never. That would be World War III, Jeff. Jeff, no way. How could you even say something like this, that America and NATO are going to send F-16 fighter jets? And now, here they are, F-16 fighter jets. Why does that matter? I'll tell you why. Because now you're looking at a NATO air war against Russia. They're going to try to impose a no-fly zone. You are going to see NATO jets, U.S. fighter jets, shoot down Russian planes, kill Russian pilots, target Russian positions, strike not just on the occupied territories of Ukraine, it's going to lead to strikes within Russia itself. They are now going to massively escalate this war. Now, we don't have money to pay the bills. We're going to default, according now to the Treasury Secretary. But we got enough money, over $120 billion, to shovel to Ukraine? And we've got enough now to send them all the tanks they need, all the ammunition they need, all the armored personnel carriers they need, all the long-range missiles they need, all the F-16 fighter jets they need. So we are going to arm Ukraine to the teeth. We are weaponizing them for a massive, massive war with Russia, fighting essentially a proxy war. It's us against Russia, while we're de-weaponizing the United States. All of it as we're on the verge of going broke. You can't make this stuff up. So let me ask you, we don't have enough money to take care of our own veterans, our own homeless people. There's a homeless crisis in city after city after city after city. I'm just going now by what the Democrats are admitting. Our schools are underfunded, according to them. Our hospitals are underfunded, according to them. We've got poor people all over the United States, but we've got over $125 billion. And now we're going to escalate this into a massive missile air war against Russia. They are begging for a nuclear war. We are stumbling now into a World War III situation where we will never, ever be able to come back. And notice the timing of all of this. Bakhmut, the key strategic city in the Donbass, the Russian-speaking area of eastern Ukraine that Putin claims and the Ukrainians are trying to eject the Russian forces out of. Bakhmut, that key city, fell to Russian forces. It fell. Bakhmut is now a Russian city. The Ukrainians are in full panic. They're about to start a massive counteroffensive. They need as much firepower as possible to try to regain and retake territory seized by Putin and Russian forces. Now they're throwing everything they can with the Ukrainians. All the ammunition, all the missiles, all the armored personnel carriers, and now even F-16 fighter jets. How many more Ukrainians are going to die? I don't know. But this war is going to grind on and grind on and grind on. And what Biden is now determined to do is escalate, escalate, escalate. 617-266-6868. If we don't have the money to pay our bills, how come we have all this money now, including F-16 fighter jets, to send to Ukraine? Can somebody explain that one to me? Tommy in West Virginia. Thanks for holding, Tommy, and welcome.
Yeah, I hate to use the term circle back because it reminds me of Peppermint Patty, Jen Psaki, but let's go back to the debt crisis. I think Joe Biden has the upper hand, and the usual mantra of the Democrats, tax the rich, give to the poor. You know, the old Robin Hood story. But I don't think McCarthy has the power, and I look at the whole big picture of this country, and I really think that the Democrats do want to crash this economy and bankrupt the nation, as one of your previous callers brought out. If they crash the economy, then they can pretty much rebuild, fundamentally change, and transform America as we know it. And I think our only saving grace would be that if McCarthy were to make some capitulations as far as tax increases to just ward off a serious debt crisis. Because if Biden, what I'm reading about the 14th Amendment, you got some scholars saying he can do it. You got other scholars who say he can't do it. But the bottom line is, if he does it, our credit rating is going to tank. We are going to default. There's no question. And that's going to hurt this nation collectively. Eventually, it'll go to the Supreme Court after the fact, and whatever the decision is made, it's still going to hurt us. I think 2024 will be... That's going to determine, the election of 2024 is going to determine the future of this country. And if we have a Republican president with a Republican Senate and a Republican...
Tommy, can you hang on? I want you to finish. I don't want you to rush. Tommy now says everything rests on 2024. He believes that McCarthy will blink and that Biden will win. More next. Let me ask you, it's the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Kelly Financial Services. Who do you think is playing chicken with the debt ceiling? A, Joe Biden, B, Kevin McCarthy. To me, there's no question. It's Dementia Joe. Hence, he's threatening to invoke the 14th Amendment in order to default, saying, if you want to go ahead, I will invoke the 14th Amendment, unilaterally lift the debt ceiling. If the courts shoot it down, we'll have a default on our hands. But don't blame me, blame Kevin. The Republicans now are trying to hammer out a deal, saying they will not budge from their spending reductions. There will be one more meeting later today. It's a game of chicken. Who will blink first? You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, Kuhner. If you prefer, you can vote via our handle at Twitter, at The Kuhner Report, all one word, Kuhner, at The Kuhner Report, Kuhner. Let's go right back to Tommy in West Virginia. Tommy, you believe in this showdown with McCarthy, that Biden has the upper hand, that McCarthy will most likely cave, and that Biden will emerge victorious, correct?
Yeah, I do. And let's put it this way. The last thing this nation needs is a default on the debt. And if that happens, it's going to have all kinds of ramifications. we could go through another depression if that happens, and we don't need to go through that. Really, what this is, it's a game of chicken. Of where you got two cars driving at one another. Who's going to be the first one to turn? And I, like I said, to reiterate the point, I truly think Democrats want to crash this economy. And I look at the big picture. They've brought in probably 6 million people that are undereducated people that really have no skill set. And when they make this argument that these immigrants want to do jobs that Americans don't want to do, wrong. We only need 330,000 people to pick our fruits and vegetables. And they always throw that mantra out there that, immigrants do the agriculture. And, Barack Obama said it best that after he got elected in 2008, to fundamentally change and transform America as we know it. And you look at with the public education in our schools now, of where they're telling you that, yes, 2 girls can conceive a child. I mean, it's ridiculous what's going on. And what they're trying to do is just create as much confusion and chaos as possible, crash the system that will all be begging for the government to come in and take in. So if I were to advise Speaker McCarthy, you know what? Increase taxes on some wealthier individuals to shut up the media complex, and pray to God we can get a Republican president in the next election, as well as a majority in the Senate and a majority in the Congress. And that's the only way anything is ever going to change in this country.
Interesting. Interesting. Tommy, thank you very, very much for that call. Look, I think there's no question now that Biden is playing a game of chicken with McCarthy. I think that, and McCarthy thinks he can win. We shall see. Today, I think will pretty much determine whether we see anything solid and strong from McCarthy. Biden, though, thinks he's got the ultimate fallback. If, they meet today, McCarthy says no deal, no dice, he'll turn around and say, don't look at me. I wanted a deal. McCarthy doesn't want to have a deal. I'm going to invoke the 14th Amendment, and I'm going to lift the debt ceiling on my own. Period. End of story. And then you're going to see massive chaos because the courts, the legal system, you're going to see constitutional scholars coming out of the woodwork. The economy is going to be plunged into chaos. Can the president do this? Can he not do this? It's never been done. It's completely unprecedented. What's happening in the United States? I'm telling you, this is how world markets are going to react. International creditors, foreign investors are going to say, you guys can't raise the debt limit? And now you're invoking all kinds of insane, extra legal, extra constitutional powers and authority to do it? The United States is becoming a banana republic. And once the stock market begins to crash, and once you have 7, 8, 9% unemployment, and this is now what economists are predicting. In other words, if not a depression, a deep, deep recession. I mean, we're like lobsters in a boiling pot. And Biden now will come in and say, well, we have to start seizing homes. We got to start seizing properties. People can't pay their taxes. People aren't working. They can't pay their property taxes, their real estate taxes. We're going to need the government now to start nationalizing large parts of the economy. The country's in crisis. We're going to have to spend even more trillions of dollars. I mean, it's obvious what their strategy is. So my question to you, do you think we will default? And God forbid if we do, is this the Cloward-Piven strategy to its ultimate nth degree? Bankrupt the country, default on our debt, crash the economy, bankrupt the country, and then you move in to nationalize, socialize, and pick up all the pieces? Or will the Democrats be blamed? 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, great text. By the way, you can text us 70470, 70470. This is from 508. Jeff, is it really a game of chicken if the other driver is unconscious? Well, that's, I think, what's got everybody so nervous, is you've got Crazy Joe. You've got Dementia Joe Biden. And when he starts running around about, I've got the power to use the 14th Amendment, and I'm not afraid to use it, you're like, oh my gosh, this idiot may actually do it. He may actually do it. Remember what they said about Trump, that he was going to lead us to World War III and he would crash the economy. Instead, we had peace and prosperity. Under Joey, under Dementia Joe, he's about to crash the economy, and we're on the verge of World War III. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. 617-266-6868. Patrick in Connecticut. Thanks for holding, Patrick, and welcome.
No problem, Jeff. Hey, the F-16s flown by the Ukrainians are not going to change the battle space in Ukraine for a couple reasons. One, it takes too long to train the Ukrainian pilots. They'll have missed the spring offensive. The second reason is that what the Russians have done, after their early disasters in this war, what they've done is basically follow the same battle plan that the Union used against the Confederacy. They've isolated the Ukrainians away from the ports so they can no longer get their products to market. And what the mainstream media has never tells the American people, at least in the general reporting, is that the Ukraine is already bankrupt. They're already. But if you look at both the Moody's analysis and ratings and from S&P, they both have the Ukrainian government rated one step above financial default. So all the Russians have to do is basically stay in their defensive positions, make small advances, and just wait for the Ukrainian government to collapse under financial pressure, because the Ukrainians have already deferred debt payments that were due now until 2025, 2026. So what they've done is establish a defensive line. They're just slowly ratcheting up the pressure, and those F-16s aren't going to matter.
Patrick, I'm just curious, what do you think is Vladimir Putin's endgame? Is it to annex those regions in eastern, southern Ukraine, create a land bridge to Crimea, and create his own sort of strategic buffer and let the rest of Ukraine go? Or do you think ultimately he wants the capital, Kiev? He wants the capital to fall and basically Ukraine to fall into his hands?
So he's just going to wait until the Americans and the Europeans get tired of financing this war, and I think that we're getting pretty close to that. And then once that happens, he'll have a breakout. Then the Ukrainians are already having manpower issues. Then they'll have money power issues, and the Russians will have breakout from their defenses.
Interesting. And you think ultimately he wants to absorb all of Ukraine or just part of Ukraine?
I think why not take it all? He would then control, both axes, both routes of oil into Europe, and amass, and the breadbasket for most of Europe and Africa.
Interesting. Patrick, what do you make of this debt default that's now looming? Do you think Biden is going to actually default, invoke the 14th Amendment, which will just unleash massive economic uncertainty, almost inevitably trigger a debt default? Because what many Republicans are saying, and I agree with them, is there's no need for any default. No matter what, all we have to keep doing is paying the interest on the debt. And we have more than enough money coming in every month in revenue to keep paying the interest on the debt. So if you keep paying the interest on the debt, there will never be a default unless Biden wants to trigger a default.
You're talking about is reprioritization, and that's what the 14th Amendment would cover. Yeah, but the problem is that we're running. I think the estimate is that we're supposed to run a $2 trillion deficit this year. So even if you keep paying the interest, the government's still going to organically run out of money unless it can issue new bonds. So that reprioritization maybe extends this problem a little bit. I think McCarthy has done a pretty good job for all the. I know. There's a lot of people that are waiting for him to knuckle under because why not? Every other Republican has. I think McCarthy's done a pretty good job of keeping the troops together. I think he's done a pretty good job of being in a position to say, push the Senate to say, look, Biden's not negotiating. My bill's the only plan that keeps the government going. You guys, we need Manchin, Sinema, and a couple other Democrats who are, vulnerable in the next cycle to flip. And I actually think McCarthy's done a pretty good job, and I'm not a huge fan of his.
No, I understand. Patrick, this is interesting. So you think Biden is going to blink? You think it's a game of chicken, and McCarthy's played his hand very well, and that in the end, McCarthy will turn around and say, look, I've got the only bill that will raise the debt limit and responsibly begin to at least slow down some of this spending, reduce some of this spending, and you think that's enough to get moderate Democrats to jump on board, and in the end, Biden's going to have to say, cry uncle, and say, well, okay, and cut a deal. You think Biden will blink?
I think if he doesn't blink, you have 3 or 4 very vulnerable Democrats or Democratic-leaning senators, in the case of Kyrsten Sinema, that will blink for him. That will have to, if they want to survive politically or at least have a chance of surviving.
So they'll come out and hold a press conference and say, look, we're urging the president, make a deal. And then by then, some of that around. And then Biden's negotiating position will just collapse, right?
That's what I think.
Interesting. Wow, Patrick. Patrick, please don't be a stranger. Call again, my friend. Really, really intelligent call. 617-266-6868 is the number. Ken in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Ken, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Ken. How are you?
Good. I think it's clear that you are one of the boldest and speaks out clearly on the big issues and not at all backing off. You're not strong enough today.
Oh, okay.
This is an attempt.
What would you like me to say, Ken? Go ahead, my friend.
Coup. Jeff, this is an attempted coup. It started in the summer of 2016, went throughout the Trump administration. It's called the Russian collusion hoax. That was an attempted coup. This is stage 2 of an attempted coup. What the administration is stating is that we'll take this to the point of destroying effectively Congress, who has the power of the purse. They're saying, no, you don't. We do. And then they're challenging the Supreme Court, who they've been harassing for the last couple months, particularly Clarence Thomas, because literally it comes down to, if it gets to this point, which it should, like literally, okay, you're going to invoke the 14th Amendment, or then the Supreme Court has to act. If it doesn't, we don't have a United States of America. We have a Marxist state of America. Is that bold enough? And here's the thing. This whole thing about debt limit, or default, that's almost impossible to happen. You know why? The donor class will say, you're not destroying our money and our economy. They'll read the riot act to this administration, period.
Ken, so what you're saying is this. If he invokes the 14th Amendment, he's taking a sledgehammer to the Constitution. And it's the completion of the Russia collusion hoax, the coup attempt that started then, because essentially now we will have a king, an emperor, a dictator, a tyrant, whatever you want to call him, but we will have a strong man as president of the United States, correct?
Ditto, and it's not him. That's what's amazing about this. It's a shadow government. We have a shadow government in the United States, and we have this World Economic Forum who thinks they rule the world. This has never happened in the history of mankind. It can't sustain itself.
Ken, from your lips to God's ears, I hope you're 1,000% correct. Because I know the country will not stand for it. I won't stand for it. You won't stand for it. And I think you're right. I think ultimately it's unsustainable. We are on the brink of an imminent potential default. We shall see. We have about 10 days left. But the big meeting will be later today in the afternoon between McCarthy and Dementia Joe. If they can't come up with any kind of a negotiated settlement, anything, it looks like we will then either head to default or Biden will then use and invoke the 14th Amendment to lift the debt ceiling completely on his own, which, as Ken in New Hampshire rightly pointed out, would be the akin to taking a torch or a flamethrower or a hammer, a sledgehammer to the Constitution. Biden would now, in effect, be a dictator. 617-266-6868 is the number. Bruce in Woburn. Thanks for holding, Bruce, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm going to get that picture to you. I just haven't had time. I've had some personal stuff going on. I'm going to hand deliver it myself. But anyways, speaking about hands, this is like a carnival, you know, like with the P underneath the nuts. The hand is quicker than the eye. There's so much going on that you can't keep track of what's going on. We got our southern borders are wide open. We got over 6 million people here, which we should have charged entrance fee. Anyways, we're giving all this money to Ukraine, and I believe that if you calculate all the billions, that I bet you there's over $1 trillion that we've given them, not to mention all the stuff that we lost in Afghanistan. And then just taking the fact that who's going to rebuild Ukraine if they ever get freedom from Russia? We are. Europe isn't. We're giving everything our heart and soul to them, and we got all these people now that are in this country illegally, and we got to take care of them and our poor vets and our poor homeless. And the drugs that are being brought in here and killing our people, and what we can't even keep track of. It's sort of like, how can someone just comprehend all the damage that this guy has done to this country and the shadow government? Well, look at George Soros. He's one of the perps, and Joe Biden's in with them, and he's getting 10%. Get to the big guy back from Ukraine. We don't see none of that, Jeff. It's all cloak and daggers, and we're getting stabbed in the back, Jeff.
We're getting screwed. I mean, really, Bruce, look, let me put it to you very candidly. We're being screwed. The peasants are being screwed. We're being given the shaft. And I don't know how much longer the peasants are going to put up with it. I don't think they should anymore. I think it's way past time. But no, you're completely right. After a while, this is going to simply break the back of our country. You can't take in, look, we already have 30 million illegals in our country. 30 million. And now you got 6 more coming in with no end in sight. And we're pouring hundreds of billions into Ukraine. And it's going to be another forever war. And now we're escalating to the point that it's really a proxy war. We are now at war with Russia. And so you ask yourself, how much more can this go on? I don't think much longer. I really don't. And I believe it's all by design. No man can be this incompetent. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And, you know, to me, the ultimate big guy is Obama. To me, he's clearly the ultimate big guy. He's calling the shots, and he would love nothing more than to bankrupt the United States. The way the British Empire was bankrupted, he wants America to be bankrupted. And the only question is, when will America finally wake up and realize we have a 5th columnist in the White House? He's owned by communist China. He's owned by the globalists. He's Obama's puppet. And his job is to do incalculable damage. And you're right, Bruce. The damage that he's doing every day is absolutely incalculable. I never heard of this in my entire life. You want to raise the debt limit, you negotiate. I'm sorry. Reagan negotiated with Tip O'Neill. Clinton negotiated with Gingrich. Bush negotiated with Pelosi. Obama negotiated with Boehner. Trump negotiated with Pelosi. You know, I didn't like many of these people, but, you know, I'm sorry, that's our system. You have to negotiate. This guy, my way or the highway. No, I'll just invoke the 14th Amendment. Like, what, you guys just make stuff up now as you go along? Usurping power you don't have? So, Bruce, look, as I like to say, you're not 100%, you're 1,000% correct. And in the end, we can no longer pay, the peasants can't pay, the country can't pay, and that's why I'm telling McCarthy, either you hold the line, or you go to the country and say, fine, let's have a default. I mean, if 4.8 trillion over 10 years is too much, then you know what? Let's have the default now, because it's going to get worse. It's going to get much worse. So if I'm McCarthy, I want to see what he's made of. Today, we're going to find out. Bruce, God bless you, and thank you for that call. Al in Cambridge. Al, I've got 1 minute. The floor is yours. Go.
I'm just looking at the 14th Amendment. There's nothing in it that talks about finance except debts incurred by, quote, rebellion or insurrection, referring very specifically to the debts from the Civil War. It says the feds will pay them with or without them being included in a budget. This couldn't more specifically apply to that single event than anything else. And stretching the Constitution and burning the Constitution, that's what we're doing, burning it word by word. And ironically, for those who are pickpockets, it specifically raises the issue of reparations at the end, and it prohibits states and the feds from compensating former slave owners for the loss of their slaves.
Oh, Al, what a great way to end the show. The 14th Amendment was written in reaction and response to the Civil War. It doesn't give the president the authority to issue new debt. Biden is insane.